Hi, I'm William Turvill. I cover North America for Press Gazette, and I'm joined today by Nicholas Carlson, who is the editor-in-chief of Insider, formerly known as Business Insider. Hi, Nicholas.
Hey there, William. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I thought it'd be great if we could just start this by introducing Insider, introducing Business Insider, and introducing yourself and where you fit in. And you've been there for a long time now, haven't you? So
I have. It'll be 12 years this October. And when I joined, it was a little tech blog called Silicon Alley Insider. It was, originally founded by one of the founders of DoubleClick, which was a big startup that eventually sold to Google for $3 billion. And he wanted an East Coast answer to TechCrunch, which I don't know if everybody remembers, but used to cover Silicon Valley startups. And we started as this little blog, and it started about a year before I got there. And they quickly found there was a lot more interest, not only in the world, but also amongst New York tech readers if they covered Silicon Valley startups as well as New York startups. And so that kind of opening has been what has happened at the company over the past 12 years, meaning we went from just covering New York startups to covering all of tech. And then we said, why are we just covering tech? There's a lot more interesting things to talk about in business. So we started covering Wall Street and finance and beyond. And so in 2009, we launched the Business Insider. We kind of quickly dropped taking a lesson from Facebook. And we went on to become, by 2015, the largest business news publication in the world by reach. And, while that happened for lots of very good reasons, one of the reasons it happened, it's not a bad thing, but we had an aggressive appetite to cover topics beyond just business. We wanted to cover everything from science to hard news to politics to a little bit of entertainment and celebrity. And we found ourselves constrained by the name Business Insider. And so sort of off to the side at first, and then over time becoming the whole thing, we launched Insider. And the idea was, we wanted to bring our sensibility to covering everything. And we were curious about topics beyond just business. And so we kind of focused on that. And so I helped launch that project about 5 years ago, and it became big and is now, we've decided, the company name, the publication name. A little bit about me, just very quickly, I started as I came out of college and I wanted to be a famous short story writer. That is not a job. And my plan was to have a day job, do that, and then write at night. It took me about 3 weeks to realize that didn't work for me. I couldn't have a job that I wasn't also existentially motivated by. And the things that existentially motivated me didn't motivate me enough to do the work. And so I needed to get paid for those kinds of things. And so I started to think about what is something that is kind of like this and also has a profession associated with it. And I remembered a lot of the journalism I'd done in college and before. And so I applied for 1 million jobs, actually literally about 200. I didn't get very many interviews. I got 2. One was at a trade publication covering chain stores. I was very excited about my prospects there. They had a role for someone making $25,000 a year in covering chain stores. And I got a few stages in, and then they said no, because they didn't have a J school degree. But I did get a job at somewhere called internetnews.com. They gave me my start, and I'm very grateful for that. It was a publication, news for IT managers, and I learned a few things there. And one of the cool things that happened to me there was they said, sorry, kid, you don't get to cover the important tech companies like Microsoft or Cisco or Oracle. You have to cover these like new, who knows if they're anything companies like Google or Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. And so I got to cover this wave of tech companies that kind of took over. And that was great for me. And then the other nice thing is that it was a very old school shop in the sense that they would not let us aggregate, which is, I think actually a really great way of spreading information and telling stories. But we were not allowed to do that there. Every story you wrote had to be sourced directly to the original source of the fact. And so that meant when Kevin Delaney of the Wall Street Journal would report on the Google co-founders buying a plane and going around and having all kinds of fun on it, I needed to call up Google. Hi, I'm Nicholas Carlson. Is it true that Larry and Sergey have a cool plane? Like that kind of thing. And it just taught me the habit of getting on the phone and calling and doing a lot of reporting. So I did that for a year and a half, and then I went over to Valleywag, which people are increasingly not having heard of, but it was a Silicon Valley gossip blog, part of the Gawker media empire. Gawker is now gone from the face of the earth, also having been destroyed by Peter Thiel and a little bit Hulk Hogan, although mostly Peter Thiel. I was there for a year, and then in the last financial crisis, the last big recession that this country and this world has faced, I got laid off, and I looked around for a bunch of jobs. And one nice thing about being a journalist is terrible it is to be laid off in one of these crises. At least your resume is public. You know, your work is out there, and when that happens, and you have digital experience, then you can go out and show people your work and show them you're good. And I was able to do that, and I got hired into this little startup called Silicon Alley Insider. And so I started as a tech reporter. I broke a few big stories. The biggest story that I broke early on was there was always this talk about Mark Zuckerberg and his and the Winklevoss brothers. Did he steal the idea from them or not? There was a lawsuit, and in that lawsuit there was evidence that had not been admitted to the court because of all kinds of red tape, and we can't get into that. We don't need to get into that right now. But it was made known to the world that there was this trove of instant messages Zuckerberg had sent to all his friends while he was in college. And after lots of reporting, several years of digging, I got them. And I published them and kind of revealed the real history of the founding of Facebook. And so I did that for a while. I got tasked with some editing and some writing, and then I launched this Insider thing. I wrote a book, came back, had an idea for a new publication. That was the Insider idea. And a couple years ago, about 2.5 years now, I was asked to be global editor-in-chief of a kind of combined Insider Business Insider, and that's what we're doing now. So that's me in a nutshell. Sorry to go on so long.
Yeah, and so you've written a couple of books now, is that right?
I've written one book. Just one book. I loved it. I would write another book. I am a one-track person. I wrote a story the other day, and it was so painful switching from editor mode to writer mode. I don't know how people like David Remnick and all these others do it, where they're able, and Nick Thompson is the other one at Wired. I'm just like, how are you doing this? I'm not capable. One of the things I learned early on is that I was a reporter and an editor for a while, and I was not the reporter I wanted to be, nor was I the editor I wanted to be. And I just focused on one or the other, and I got much better at I actually dropped all my management responsibilities and became the chief correspondent for Business Insider. And that's when I wrote a number of stories that got a lot of recognition and a book deal and so forth. And then when I was doing the book, I thought of this other management project that I wanted to launch, and I've been focused on that since. And for me, I'm just a person that I have to focus, and otherwise I get lost and I don't do as well as I'd like to. And so someday I will write another book, I hope. But right now I'm focused on a very high impact creative project, and I'm excited about it.
Okay. And I was going to ask actually, just cutting back slightly, but I was going to ask, it must have seemed a bit risky at the time joining a startup like Business Insider, but I suppose, as you were saying, you've just been laid off, so it was kind of a leap of faith, but then it was kind of worth the risk.
Great. Yeah, and there's a lesson in that broader. I mean, so first off, at Gawker Media, I was making $12 a post, and I was a permalancer. So when I say laid off, it really was like, sorry, no more assignments. They just stopped working with me one day. And, it felt like a layoff because it was a daily job in a way that I don't think that companies do. There are laws in New York now that you can't do what I was doing in the past, 12 years ago. Companies can't hire people like me the way they hired me. But anyway, no, so it actually felt more secure going into a company that actually I was a full-time employee and all these things. But, the lesson out of that is that as horrible as things look right now, and they do look horrible, and I don't want to undervalue that. They are terrible. It is also a time in which there will be an ability for companies that are doing new things in new ways that are sustainable in the new economy that will be able to latch on to whatever is out there. It's like a famine right now. And if a business is a village that can feed itself in a famine, as the sun comes out and the crops start growing again, those businesses will be able to thrive in a new way. And so, and they'll have, young versions of me staffed up because they're available when they shouldn't really be available. Gawker shouldn't have made me available, not to kind of pick up, but they did. There are many great outlets, great journalists who are available right now in a way that they should not be. And I'm hopeful for them that they latch on to the next, Business Insider. So Business Insider, and find ways to join companies that are sustainable for the long term and built on the way that actually people consume media and the business models that support that.
Again, just a little bit of background on Insider. So obviously, Press Gazette's mainly mainly has UK readers. So they'll obviously be familiar with the brand. How many countries is Insider in now?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I was thinking about, I was thinking about that question, and there's a few different ways to answer it. So one is that we have bureaus and people who are journalists in the newsroom that I would consider owned and operated by our company in soon Singapore, but London, and I think there's someone in Australia. I know there is, and so that's where we have in the countries. So those are countries. We do also have different bureaus across the United States. We have San Francisco, DC, LA, Chicago team. But then the other way of looking at it is we also have this model where we work with other media companies who license our brand to publish Business Insider or insider stories in other markets. And we work very closely with them. In fact, we have oversight over their editorial product. We do definitely delegate and trust a lot of that. And so, for example, there's the Business Insider Germany, and then there is also a Business Insider in Spain. And so, for those arrangements, there's about 16 or 17 different countries that we are in, and we like that model. It's good. It's a good way to find partners around the world who are excited to work on our, but also understand their market probably a little bit better than we would, and are more established both on the business side and on the journalism side.
Okay, and how many staff and editorial staff does Insider have now? And if you give us an idea of the sort of growth of that would be great as well.
Sure. Well, 12 years ago there were 5 of us, and now there's 350. So so that's about, if you want to do like a trajectory arrow, that's where we are. So and then, by the way, we have about 40 or 45 or 50 in London. Like the London team. We are a transatlantic media company in a way that I don't think everybody really recognizes. We have 3 divisions. I didn't mention this. There's so we started with Business Insider. We kind of launched this umbrella brand, which is Insider. And in that, there are 3 divisions. There's Insider News, Insider Life, and Business Insider. And each has an editor-in-chief that report to me. And our Insider News editor-in-chief, his name is Jim Edwards, and he's based in London. So I just sort of, I think that it's a great, there's a lot of advantages to having people in London. The talent is great. The sensibility is usually great, and the time zone's also very helpful too, and the global perspective is really valuable to us as well. So that's the team size. We had plans to grow even more this year. We were going to add 90 journalists this year, and that's the part. We were going to add 90 this year at one point, and then this pandemic happened, and we are still excited to add more people, but we feel like, look, we got to be careful and not reckless, and so we want to. I don't know what the number is now, but it's lower than that, and that's just out of an abundance of caution, as the phrase goes these days.
Yeah, but you're still planning to recruit this year. Or as things stand, yeah.
Yes.
That in itself, even if it's not 90, that's quite positive, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is. And by the way, things happen fast that you don't foresee, and so I'm not predicting anything. I definitely did not predict a pandemic and a recession to do with it. But yes, that is as things go ahead. We look at ourselves and we say, okay, we're good to add carefully throughout the rest of this year and beyond. So and we're not the only ones doing well in an environment. I'm not as I'm more familiar with the New York market in terms of media, but certainly the New York Times and Wall Street Journal are adding very fast. And there is a this is kind of what I was going back to before. I think there is a digital focused media type that works and is even in this environment. And actually, there's such a big story right now that there's attention to it that, if you are able to publish stories that people really want to know and it's not available elsewhere, you can have a subscription business. And subscription businesses like the New York Times, like the Wall Street Journals, like ours, can continue to thrive in even harrowing environments.
Yeah. And how many subscribers does Insider have now? Roughly?
I can't answer that one, but we're well ahead of, I have a bunch of annoying PR friendly answers to that, which would, if I were in your shoes, but we're well ahead of plan. We're, we crushed our Q1 goal by, I think, 60% or something. We're very excited and we think it works, and we're going to do more and more and more and more. So.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of, obviously, I imagine subscriptions is the main part of the business in terms of making money, and that's why Insider's.
I can't. It's subscriptions are that we're treading into areas where I'm not probably super authorized to speak, but I can say that it remains a large part of a diversified revenue base of very many different models, and I would not say we are in a position to say like the New York Times where it is the model and is the thing that drives their business. This, I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn to say in 10 years, I'd like it to be a massive lion's share of what we do, and funding a newsroom that is even larger than where we are now. And it's just such a good business model. Not to say that advertising isn't good in its own ways and whatever, but subscriptions are great because it really aligns enterprise reporting which is what reporters love to do, and it's good for the world, with the reader and the business. It's all nice and together, and it's really exciting, actually. So we have seen that investigative feature reporting, great beat reporting on businesses, on things that people want to know and need to know, will drive a subscription business. And so that's why we're investing in it. And as someone who really believes in the power of journalism, I'm very excited about that. And I think whether it's us or, you are seeing other people thrive on the new way of thinking. So that's great.
Okay. In terms of the way things run at Insider, I mean, how is everyone working from home at the moment?
Yeah, we all started on March 6th. We said we strongly support anybody working from home. By March 13, everybody was working from home. Yeah. We have limited. I like going to an office. It's nice to see people and have casual conversations and have the spark of an idea kind of meet with a casual moment. Mm-hmm. But I work, like I said before, when I worked for Gawker, actually 12 years ago, I worked from home. And back then we had a chat room, an email, and that was the only way we could be in touch with each other. And that was very deep. This conversation, you're not here right now, William, but I feel like I'm speaking to you, and that is a big difference. And so we kind of have a newsroom in the cloud. That's what I've been thinking about, and not only is it in the cloud in the sense that it's not physically, in an office right now, it also meant in the moment we were able to, just like you can, like a cloud service can kind of like put computing power on servers that need it right then, very flexibly. We could kind of quickly adjust the entire newsroom to suit the moment. And so I think, and I think other newsrooms have done this too. I was talking to a bunch of editors recently, and, we were able to throw 10, 20 other people on this story in a way that we wouldn't have. And so people are working from home. They're able to do their jobs, which is really great. I'm very fortunate. So we yes, things are going well. We have we're over communicating with our teams. I have a newsroom meeting that I used to do. I used to meet with the entire newsroom, all 350 people once a month. Now I'm meeting with them every week. And so answering questions, and there are a lot of hard questions. People want to know, how are things going? Are we going to be okay? And so it's a lot of over communicating. And then the other big challenge is that there was just so much adrenaline right at the start of this thing, where there was just a flood of productivity, and every good story would get a massive audience immediately. And it's not an ebb away from that entirely, but you can sense that this Monday was the first Monday where it wasn't a surprise that you're still working from home, if you know what I mean. And so we are trying to manage different levels. And one important thing for us is all along has been like, look, we are literally an essential service. We're on the list. People need good, clean journalism right now. Safe for consumption news, not just about the disease, but also about the markets and personal finance and things like that. We just need to be smart and safe. But we also, so we're needed, but we can't burn out. And so this is hard. I've been really stressing to our parents. I am a parent. It's hard having your kids in your house while you're trying to work, especially if you're trying to teach them. Like, we have people here who are trying to be parents, teachers, and employees. And so we're saying to them, like, we can work flexible hours. And by the way, when you don't sit at your desk all day, stand up, walk outside, take breaks, take days off, take your days off, people forget to do that. So I think that's an important side of it. And so that's how we are.
Yeah. And do you live in New York?
Yes, I do. I live in Brooklyn. So, yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah. So, it's one of these things where you kind of like look, confirmation bias, right, is a thing. So you kind of have that, and you're like looking around, and how is this a pandemic, and what does it look like, and to be the epicenter of the pandemic. And so, at first, it was just, people working from home, and all of your favorite restaurants are closed. And then the next thing to happen was the sirens. There was a stretch of weeks there, and it really, thank God, has tapered off, where you couldn't go outside without hearing a siren. And then sometimes it would be siren after siren after siren after siren of ambulances rushing people to the hospital. And that was disturbing. I just remember one night going outside and just hearing it and being like, oh my God, will they stop? And they just didn't. And so that's as harrowing as it really gets. And the other weird thing, and I think is that people wear masks on the street now, and everybody does. And that was, maybe one or two people were a few weeks ago. Now everybody is. It's the rule. If you can't keep social distance, you have to wear them. And so, I'm trying to figure out how to wear a mask and not fog up my glasses all the time. I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. I tilted way up, and then I'm worried that I'm not getting enough blockage down here. So anyway, it's weird. I hope that doesn't last forever. Otherwise, it's kind of eerily still the same street. There's there is a hospital near here that doesn't look that different. I check on it every once in a while. There are scenes from New York that I'm not as near. Elmhurst is in Queens. That's a bit away, and that hospital has just been utterly slammed by this. It is the epicenter of the epicenter. And then even in Central Park, they built out temporary hospital beds. And although the really good news, I don't know if you saw I think it was maybe Global News, but a giant hospital ship came in from the Navy, and it is now leaving because it's no longer necessary. And so that's great news. So
yeah. But I read, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, your blog saying your expectation is for this to last until the fall of 2021, wasn't it?
The pronoun "this" is doing a lot of work there, and I tried to like get at it. And what do I mean by this? What is like? So do I think I'll be working from home until then? No, I don't think so. I just think and normal is even such a silly word because there's all kinds of moments when you can argue things stopped feeling normal. I think that no matter what your partisan views are, November 3rd, 2016 was a big departure from normal because a reality TV star was elected president. And so it's a big, whoa, moment. Like history doesn't necessarily follow these things. And so but I do think, when do we get back to the point where we are just casually bumping into people at concerts and not worrying about it, and hugging old people, and it's all kind of back to normal, which it won't be normal. But I do think that's fall 2021.
Yeah.
And I say that with a mix of pessimism and optimism. I don't say that out of total pessimism. I think that what I'm hearing, there's, speaking to our journalists, reading our coverage, the consensus seems to be, not really consensus, but the experts say it's going to take at least 18 months to create a vaccine for this. By the way, normally they take 5 to 10 years to develop. And so that's actually extremely fast. And one equity analyst was saying that actually it's going to be, that he gives it a 20% chance of happening in 2021 and a 50% chance of happening by 2023. And so I'm more optimistic than he is. I feel like there's never been a bigger incentive to get this done. I feel like I've read about large pharmaceutical competitors working together to figure out how to manufacture this thing. But it does need to get to billions of people, and that is a huge challenge. And so that's going to take 18 months. And so if you rewind the clock a bit, you're looking at fall 2021. So, and I think what the important thing there for me and for the newsroom and for society really is that we don't have a series of like negative news shocks around it not being normal until then. I mean, like, we just need to understand it's going to be weird for a long time, and better get used to it now. And also in your personal lives, build out routines that are built on forward-looking estimations of what it's going to be like this way, rather than trying to, jerry-rig back to the old way of doing things. And so I just feel like for my mental health, I would love nothing more than to be surprised and be wrong, and for there to be a treatment that comes out that makes it so, like, if you're old and you have a comorbidity, they just like stick it in your arm and you're fine. That would be amazing. Obviously, I'm also hopeful. There's like, how weird would it be if suddenly, turns out actually 70% of us already had this thing. There's a lot we don't know. It seems like that's pretty unlikely. And then the one that worries me, I think, is the idea that we just get sick of this and rip the Band-Aid off and go back to try to go back to normal. I think that, in my most selfish head, that's great. Go back to my favorite bars, restaurants, and movie theaters. I love restaurants. I love playing soccer. Cool. But does that mean millions of people are going to die? I don't know. And so that's why I came up with that number.
And just final question, so I'm conscious we're running out of time a little bit. You talked earlier about how there may be some positives to emerge from this for the news industry, news business. I'd be curious to know what kind of businesses, what kind of organisations you think may struggle to survive throughout this, which ones will survive, and which ones can thrive.
Yeah. Well, so, during the last recession, it was for 20 years now, we've been saying the newspaper is dead, and it's still here, and the New York Times is thriving. I do think we are looking at an extremely hard time for local newspapers. I'm not as familiar with what that market looks like in the UK and beyond. In the US, it is very hard right now for local newspapers, and a lot of that has to do with it. But what that is not a signal that people don't care about local information. It's a signal that the cost structures that were once supported by business models that are now gone are not supportable by them any longer. And so there are still people who can gather and report information that people need to know, and there's still demand for it. And I think there is enough of each that there is a model that works. And my guess is it's subscriptions. And so I think that even in local, if you are reporting things people need to know and you're charging enough for it, and there is a real there's a real thorn in this, which is that information, people need it, the world needs it, and so you're kind of eliminating a large group of people in an economic category who can't necessarily afford subscriptions, and that is true, and that is a weakness in this model. But I do think that there is a world in which, people are able to, on a much lower cost, do journalism and make enough money to make long-term investors happy with the return they're getting, as they slowly build out a new 21st century business model around journalism. So that's what I think is going to happen it's already happened on a national and global scale. That's the New York Times is just like a rocket right now. I mean, they are just doing extremely well. We are chasing that rocket and are excited to be in that ballgame, to mix metaphors. But there are also solutions to other smaller problems. And if I'm an investor right now, like, I look at all the journalism talent available, and I throw money at smart entrepreneurs who feel like they know how to build models for this new environment, leveraging that talent. So that's, without making a prediction, I do think that there's, look, again, Silicon Alley Insider came out of the last recession. A company that can figure out how to live in the lean times will thrive in the fat times. So hopefully the fat times come again soon, and we've got lots of great new journalism enterprises.
Great, hope so too. I have